taxonomy is basically the science of naming and classifying organisms. And the big thing here is to remember that taxonomy is a human construct. Okay, so it's something that humans came up with. So some animals don't quite fit exactly where they're supposed to. For example, this weekend, my son and my husband and I, we found a turtle in the backyard. So, oh, we found a turtle. It was really cool. And a friend of my husband's, they're all into science too. She said, well, that's actually a tortoise. And my husband looked it up and he said, well, it's actually a turtle. It's, even though it lives on land, it's considered a turtle. And she said, well, it's got the claws like a tortoise, but it is considered a pond turtle. It just spends most of its life on land. And then she said, dang evolution and that taxonomy stuff. This is literally a conversation on my Facebook that they had. And basically the thing is that that turtle, right? He's just like, whatever, I'm a turtle, I'm living my life. He doesn't realize that humans are fighting over whether he's a turtle or a tortoise. He's just, doing his own thing. And he doesn't realize that turtles are supposed to live in the water and that tortoises are supposed to live on land. He's just, living his turtle life. And so that's the point to kind of remember is this is all, it comes about from a human's desire to kind of organize things and life around us. So this is an example of a cladogram, and you can kind of see here what happens is basically we start here. This is like the ancestral group, and then they develop something called a cuticle, which is basically like a hard outer skeleton. And then after they develop the cuticle, the group splits. So everyone in this picture has a cuticle. Okay, and then we're coming here, and the group splits again, and there's probably some trait that's not listed that has them. They develop there. And then this is where they develop chitin in their exoskeleton, and then they appendages for moving around, locomotion. Okay, so everyone past here has all those traits. And then, we're splitting again, and then as we move here, everyone here has a jointed appendage, and it goes on and on. There's something at every part that made them say that they're different from one another. Scientists, they just only listed a couple here. So we can classify things. We have this system, and it's when I was a kid, I learned King Philip came over for good spaghetti. And then they changed it. They added a domain when I got a little older. So now they said, Dear King Philip came over for good spaghetti. And the farther down you get, the more detail it is. So like a domain's going to hold a lot of creatures or organisms. And then a kingdom's going to hold just a little fewer. And then a phylum's going to be a little fewer and fewer and fewer until you get to a species, which is something very specific. And then we had this thing called binomial nomenclature. So this is when they talk about when they do a lab and it says something like, and I provide the scientific name. This is what they're talking about. There's binomial nomenclature name. And it basically is a two-part system, and it names all critters. And the big thing is that the genus is capitalized and the species is not. It's lowercase, and it's always italics. Okay, so for example, a human is Homo sapiens. Mola mola is a type of fish. Aurelia aurita is a type of jellyfish. And you can see they all have that capitalized genus name and that lowercase species name. And here's one here too. This is what looks like a grizzly bear with the capitalized genus and the lowercase species. So now we can talk about phylogenetics, and this is actually more recent than cladistics. So a cladogram was kind of made, it's kind of back in the day, that's what they did. It looks very similar. The only thing is phylogenetic trees are actually based on DNA. And so again, it looks like a family tree. So it's the same kind of thing, right? It looks like this is probably the oldest branch, right? And then these guys kind of broke away, and then this ancestral organism gave rise to all of these. So, and the important thing is to note is here, these are current species. So these are things that are alive today. Everything else is not alive right now. So these are called ancestral species. So when people say things like humans came from monkeys, well, that's not really true, because monkeys are currently alive. So there was some sort of ancestral species that humans and monkeys shared an ancestral species and then split off to form the different branches. So for example, this could be the branch that formed humans, and this could be the branch that formed the other primates. Okay, so we didn't come from monkeys because monkeys still exist, right? These critters on the right here, they came from these ancestral species that are not alive anymore. So now we can talk about cladistics. You guys probably made some cladograms that look kind of similar to this. And it's basically, we're using shared and derived characters to group critters. So a shared character is something that they all have in common. So for example, if we look at this one right here, everyone past this line has jaws. So that would be a shared characteristic. Okay, and then a derived character is it evolved only in the group being studied. So let's say, for example, the feathers, that would be a derived character. Or this fur and mammary glands, that's only in the mammals that could be derived. And so it depends on what group you're studying, right? If you're studying everything that has a jaw, then that could be a derived character. If you're studying just birds, then that would be a derived character. And so then a cladogram is basically where we show possible relatedness. So this whole diagram would be called a cladogram. And then each group would be called a clade. So for example, the hagfish could be a clade, or the lizard could be a clade. So here's the diagram a little larger. Probably should have drawn all over that one instead. So now let's talk about the different domains. We have domain bacteria. These are small single-celled prokaryotic organisms. This means they have no nucleus. Domain archaea, that's these guys. They have distinct cell membranes, and they can be autotrophic or heterotrophic. So they can make their own food, or they can eat outside food. And then domain eukarya is all eukaryotic organisms nucleus. Now, if we look at our kingdoms, kingdom eubacteria are what they call the true bacteria. Okay, and then we have kingdom archaebacteria, and they're basically prokaryotes in the domain archaea. So they're in that special domain archaea, but they're not what they consider true bacteria, even though they're called archaebacteria. And then we have kingdom protista, and these are basically like a catch-all group, and most of these groups are show evolutionary relatedness, and they've showed DNA to show that they're related. But protista is like this weird kingdom that just has like a bunch of things that they didn't know where else to put them. And so they put them in stuff. So that's basically what that is. Then we can go and talk about kingdom fungi. So these are eukaryotic and they're heterotrophic. They're not plants, but they kind of like act kind of like plants because they just kind of like their own food, right? But they absorb nutrients, so they're essential in decomposing and the recycling of nutrients on the planet. Okay, and then we have kingdom plantae. These are eukaryotic and they're multicellular plants, so they're plants that have more than one cell. And then we have kingdom Animalia, which is basically they're eukaryotic, they're multicellular, but they can't make their own food. But they're not fungi either.